Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah here. We're holding a Mishnah Berurah Chelik Aleph, and we will be learning today with Hashem Daf Yud Amud Aleph. We are continuing to learn halachos netillas yadayim, and we pick up today on Tes Amud Beis. I stopped yesterday just a drop short of completing Sif Yud Beis. So I'm going to kind of review Sif Yud Beis, mostly outside, without going through the vast majority of the Mishnah Berurah. We really only have one Mishnah Berurah left, Ois Katan Chavav, which is a very short Mishnah Berurah, but it would be very hard to capture Ois Katan Chavav without reviewing the Sif. So I'm going to read Sif Yud Beis again inside the Shulchan Aruch and just briefly review what we learned in Sif Yud Beis. Says the Mechaber, Im Shich Sheikh Yadav L'Sayt Kli Shalmayim, if you dunked your hands into a keli of water. So instead of washing your hands from running water, instead of pouring water over your hands, there was a keli, let's say a barrel of water, and you dunked your hands inside this bucket or barrel of water. Says the Mechaber, also like netillas l'kriyas shema v'letfila, this would be an effective way to wash your hands as far as preparation for kriyas shema and for davening. Aval, however, loy l'ruach rosh alein, it would not be effective to remove the ruach ra. Now, the Mishnah Berurah explained over here in Ois Katan Yud Beis, and he said, well, let's take a look. Let's analyze this from our perspective of the three different reasons that we know for why you would have to wash the netillas yadayim. We have the Rosh. The Rosh says you have to wash the netillas yadayim in the morning because yadayim askani yoisheim, while you're sleeping, your hands are busy. They touch all sorts of different areas of the body. Therefore, you have yadayim mitunafos. Your hands are unclean, and you cannot daven, can't say kriyas shema, you can't daven with those unclean hands. So you have to wash the netillas yadayim, and you make a berachah, asher kedishanu b'mitzvaysav v'tzivanu al netillas yadayim, because this netillas yadayim is a mitzvah, and the berachah of al netillas yadayim is a berachah ha-mitzvahs. You're making a berachah on the mitzvah of cleansing your hands, preparatory to Kabbalah Sal Malchus Shemayim of Kriya Shema and for Tefillah. Now, for that purpose, for the Rosh's purpose, does dunking your hands in a bucket work? Yeah, it cleans your hands. So, Rosh, check. Very good. It's an effective way of washing your hands. You yotzin netillas yadayim, you make a bracha. Next, Rashba. The Rashba says, why do we wash our hands in the morning? Because when you awake in the morning, Nasa Kibriya Chadasha, the pasuk in Eicha says, Chadashim labekarim rabbe emunosecha, we are renewed and refreshed every morning. So when Nasa Kibriya Chadasha, the Rebbeinu Shalom returns our neshama to us, we have a chiyuv to give shavach v'hidah to the Rebbeinu Shalom. We need to thank the Rebbeinu Shalom for this. So Chazal wa masakin, that the same way a kohen, before he goes to the Beis HaMikdash to do the Avodah, he has to go to the kiyar and he has to wash his hands and feet from the kiyar with a keli. So too, when we get up in the morning and we're nasa kibriya chadasha and we're approaching a new day of Avodas Hashem, we have to go wash our hands. And we make a bracha of Asher Kedishanu b'mitzvaysav v'tzivanu al netillas yadayim. Now, according to the Rashba, this bracha, it would seem, is a little bit different than the bracha according to the Rosh. According to the Rosh, it's a berachah ha-mitzvahs. We have the mitzvah to cleanse our hands, preparatory to Kabbalah Sal Malchus Shemayim and to Tefillah. According to the Rashba, it's a little bit more of a berachas haidah. Matter of fact, we learned earlier, when the Mishnah Berurah, at the beginning of the Siman, introduced us to the Rashba, back on Ches Amud Aleph in Mishnah Berurah Ois Katan Aleph, the words of the Chavetz Chaim are, Tzrichin anu lahodos lo yisparach. We have to thank Kutchabrichu, Shebra anu lechvaydai, who created us for his kavod, l'sharsai, to serve him, ulevarech shemai, and to bench his name. Val davro zeh tiknu b'shachar kol oisan habrachos, shanu mevarchin b'chol biker. And that's why we have all of the berachas hashachar that we have in the morning. Pakeach ivrim, malbish arumim, asher nasal asech vivino lafche ben yom vein loyla. These are not berachas ha-mitzvahs, they're berachas haidah. The brachas that we make to thank the Rebbeinu Shalom for all the gifts that he has given us. Lochein, gam davrozet tiknu bashachar. This berachah of netillas yadayim and the washing is a similar type of takana. Lehiskadesh b'kedushasai, to sanctify ourselves in the kedusha that we receive from the Rebbeinu Shalom. V'lital yadeinu min akli, to wash our hands from a keli. Kikayin shemekadish yadav min akiyar kaidam avaydasai. So, according to the Rashba, why are we washing our hands? We're washing our hands to thank the Rebbeinu Shalom, Chadashim labekarim rabbe emunasecha, and to prepare ourselves for another day of Avodas Hashem, like the Kayin prepares himself when he goes to do the Avodah in the Beis HaMikdash. Okay, so how about dunking your hands in a bucket? Does that serve the purposes of the Rashba? It certainly serves the purposes of the Rush. The Rush, it's really just a question of cleaning your hands. The Rashba is a little bit more esoteric than the Rush. The Rashba, we're comparing ourselves to a Kayin washing from the Kiyar. Now the Kayin, when he washed from the Kiyar, used a keli. So there would be an argument to make that perhaps dunking your hands in a bucket does not serve the purposes of the Rashba. Yet, what the Mishnah Berurah told us is, it does. Why? The Kayin, washed from a keli. So the Mishnah Berurah brings down a drasha, and the Mishnah Berurah says it does serve the purposes of the Rashba, because even though the Rashba is making this comparison to the Kiyar, by the Kiyar it says, Verachatzu mimenu Aaron ubanav, Aaron and his children washed from the Kiyar. And what we learn out from that is they took water from the Kiyar in a keli, and then they washed with a keli. Yes, so the Kehanim had to wash with a keli from the Kiyar. And we darshan Verachatzu mimenu, they have to remove the water from the Kiyar. V'loi b'soichai, they could not dunk their hands into the Kiyar. So again, there would seem to be an argument that if the Rashba is comparing our netillas yadayim shel shachris to the Kayin washing from the Kiyar, an argument could be made the same way the Kayin used a keli, perhaps we should also have to use a keli, and therefore dunking the hands into the bucket would not fulfill the requirements of the Rashba. But, says the Mishnah Berurah, Verachatzu mimenu v'loi b'soichai, that drasha is made only by the Kiyar. That was specific to the Kiyar. By the Kiyar, you need to wash with a keli. Ha ba'alma, but all the other washings that we do, afilu b'soichai. Over there, you don't have this drasha of mimenu v'loi b'soichai. You can even dunk b'soichai. So the conclusion that Mishnah Berurah comes to is, you dunk your hands into a bucket, you have fulfilled the purposes of the Rush, you have fulfilled the purposes of the Rashba, and therefore the Mechaber said, also like netillah l'kriyas shema v'letfila, you have washed, you have done what you need to do as far as now being able to say kriyas shema and to daven, and because you have fulfilled both the Rush and the Rashba, you certainly could make a berachah. But the Mechaber said, but you did not fulfill the requirement of removing the ruach ra from your hands. And the Mishnah Berurah explains, he says, why is that? He says, because in order to remove the ruach ra, you need to pour water 3 times on each hand. Remember, we brought down the Gemara in Shabbos that this ruach ra is a bas chayrin. She sets the rules of what it takes for her to leave the hands, and what it takes is pouring 3 times. So dunking doesn't work to take off the ruach ra. And the Mishnah Berurah, the Chavetz Chaim explains, he says that's true even if you would dunk your hands 3 times. It still can't take off the ruach ra. Why? Explains the Mishnah Berurah, because what happens after you dunk the first time? You dunk the first time, you deposit the ruach ra into the water. Now, after that, every time you dunk, you're dunking into water that's imbued with ruach ra. That water can no longer serve to take off the ruach ra. Like the words of the Chavetz Chaim, he says that water is now kamay shayfchin. It's like wastewater that you cannot use to take off ruach ra. Okay, but then let's go back into the Mechaber. Then the Mechaber said, Im shikshek yadav b'shloisha meimois mechulafim. But what if you dunked your hands 3 times into 3 different bodies of water? So each time you dunk your hand into a fresh body of water, then says the Mechaber at the end of Sif Yud Beis, Yesh lehistapikim also lelahav ruach rosh alein. Then there's room for a suffix that maybe it does take off the ruach ra. Why? Because you dunked your hands once into fresh water. Now you dunk your hands a second time into fresh water. This second body of water is not yet imbued with ruach ra. Then you dunk your hands into a third body of fresh water. Maybe 3 dunks, each one going into fresh water that does not have ruach ra. Maybe that can take off the ruach ra. Or maybe no. Maybe the only way ruach ra comes off is by pouring from a keli. That's the suffix that the Mishnah Berurah introduces to us here in Ois Katan Chav Hey when it comes to the removal of ruach ra. Do we say that all you need is sort of washing in fresh water 3 times? So if you dunk your hands into 3 different bodies of water, or 3 different places in the snow, or you dunk your hands 3 times into a flowing river, so you're not dunking your hands each time in the same water. You're dunking your hands in 3 times in 3 different pools of water. Could be that's effective to take off the ruach ra, or it could be that you actually need pouring from a keli in order to remove ruach ra, and that's why in the Mechaber said here in Sif Yud Beis, over there, now there's a suffix. Yesh lehistapek im also lahavir ruach ra sha aleihen. He says, we don't know, mesupik. Now, in Mishnah Berurah Eis Katan Chavav, this is the Mishnah Berurah that we had left, the Mechaber said that dunking the hands in the buckets fulfills the requirements of the Rosh and the Rashba for Kriya Shema for Tefillah. Aval loy lahav ruach rosh alei, and it doesn't take off the ruach ra. Says the Chavetz Chaim Eis Katan Chavav. Al kain, therefore, since dunking is not effective to take off the ruach ra, yira lital pamshenis min kli, you should make sure to wash your hands 3 times from a keli. Afilu achar tefillah, even if you're going to do so after davening. In other words, what the Mishnah Berurah is telling you is like this. Let's say you find yourself taka in such a situation where you do not have the ability to pour water 3 times on your hands in the morning. So you go outside of your off-the-grid cabin where you have no running water and you don't have a keli, you don't have a negavasa shissel, and it's snowing outside. So you go outside, dunk your hands in the snow. Maybe you even dunk your hands 3 times in 3 different places in the snow. You took care of the rush. You took care of the rashba. You can make a berachah asher kedishanim b'mitzvahs of Siman al netillas yadayim. Now you could go daven. You could be b'kabel ol malchus shamayim. You could daven shemona esrei. Everything is fine. Now, an hour later, you get in your car and you drive to town, and there's a place where you have the ability to take a keli and wash normal negelvasser. You should. You know why? In order to take off the ruach ra, because it's possible that until this point, you did not successfully remove the ruach ra. I would dare say that furthermore, until you get the ability to wash 3 times from a keli, you should be nizar not to touch your mouth, your eyes, your nose, the piyat tabas, your ears, because you don't want to risk becoming harmed by the ruach ra. Okay, that was a quick synopsis on Sif Yud Beis. Now let's go to Sif Yud Gimel, 3 lines off the bottom near the end of the line in the Mechaber. Very, very common shaila, a very fascinating topic. Says the Mechaber, Im haya neyar kol halayla, if somebody was up all night long, Shavuos night, somebody was up all night long, Im haya neyar kol halayla, yesh lehistapek, there's room to have a suffix, Im tzarech lito yadav shachris lehispalel, suffix number 1, do you have to wash the netillas yadayim of the Rosh and the Rashba? Do you need to wash the netillas yadayim now in order to go to Kriya Shema and to Tefillah? That's suffix number 1. Not only that, there's also suffix number 2. Ulahavir ruach rami yadav. We have an equal suffix on both rationales for having to wash the netillas yadayim. We don't know if you have to wash the netillas yadayim for Kriya Shema and Tefillah, Rosh and Rashba. We also don't know if you have to wash the netillas yadayim to remove ruach ra. We don't know if there is ruach ra. So if you're up all night, we have a complete suffix whether or not you have to wash netillas yadayim. And therefore, says the Ramah Hagah, v'yitleim b'loy bracha, and therefore he brings down from the Rosh and from the Rashba, he brings down that in such a situation where somebody was up all night long, he should wash the netillas yadayim, but he should wash without a bracha. Let's explore this fascinating question. Let's take a look at the Mishnah Berurah, Eis Katan Chav Zayin. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Kol halayla. First of all, points out the Mishnah Berurah, Im yashan b'miktsasa, if you slept even a little bit, then l'kulei alma tzarich lital yada b'bayker kadin. Then, according to everybody, you would have to wash your hands in the morning in the normal fashion. V'hu sheyashan shinas kva al mitasai, as long as you slept a shinas kva, shita nishman, 60 breaths, you slept, let's say a half hour, and you slept on your bed, then for certain, you have to wash the netillas yadayim in the normal fashion and make a regular bracha of al netillas yadayim in preparation for Kriya Shema and for tefillah. Why? Umishon destaim yadayim askani oisein ubevadai naga b'makoim mitunif. Certainly, you have the problem of the rush, which is you slept a shinas kva on your bed. If you slept a shinas kva on your bed, then according to the Rosh, yadayim askani, you're saying you probably touched a makom b'chusa on the guf, and now before you could come to Kriya Shema tefillah, you have to wash it, you have to make out netillas yadayim. Avalim yashid shinas arai, but if you only slept a shinas arai, you were nodding off in the Medrash, then laharash dinay bezeki lo yashid klal. Then according to the Rosh is not going to say yadayim askani, you're saying, while you're nodding off in your chair in the Medrash. And therefore, according to the Rosh, there would be no purpose in washing now. So, what he's saying is like this. So far, well, let's see, Eis Katan Chav Ches. So, the Mechaber said that if you are up the whole night, we have a dual suffix. We don't know if you have to wash in preparation for Kriya Shema or Tefillah. We also don't know if you have to wash in order to remove the Ruach Ra. Says the Chavetz Chaim, L'hispalel u'lahavir, Dahainu. What is the explanation of this suffix? Litfila, as far as the need to wash in preparation for Kriya Shema and for Tefillah, yesh suffix, im hatam shel netillas yadayim shachris kar Rashba, is the do we paskin like the Rashba? Is the reason why we wash the netillas yadayim in the morning based on the Rashba, nasa kibriya chadasha, le'el b'Mishnah Berurah sif katan aleph? Okay, let's say it is. If we paskin like the Rashba, so what happens if you are up all night? If you were up all night, well, you nasa kibriya chadasha? No, you didn't deposit your neshama with the Rabbeinu Shalom because you didn't go to sleep. Also, according to the other Mefarshim that we really didn't mention until now, who say that Pshat in Nasa Kibriya Chadasha is that upon awakening in the morning, you are refreshed. At night, when you went to sleep, you were exhausted, you were drained, right? What's the lashon of David HaMelech in Tillim? The lashon is Zeramtam Sheina Yihu Baboiker Kechatzer Yachaloif. At night you're exhausted, you're falling apart, and in the morning Kechatzer Yachaloif, you're nice and refreshed, right? So that's Nasa Kibriya Chadasha. So according to the Rashba, you were up the whole night. Well, you Nasa Kibriya Chadasha? You are not Nasa Kibriya Chadasha. So at first glance, you would think that when we analyze the question of somebody who was up all night, we would think that it should be really according to nobody. You shouldn't have to wash. The Rush, you didn't sleep, so there's no yadayim askani same. There's no need for the netillas yadayim. The Rashba, you were up all night. You weren't nasa kibriya chadasha. So you could question right away, what is this suffix of the Mechaber? Why is there a suffix? Both according to the Rush and according to the Rashba, there would seem to be no need for netillas yadayim and a bracha in the morning if you were up the whole night. Explains the Mishnah Berurah over here, no, there is a suffix, and he's explaining now what the suffix is. Dahainu, litfila, when it comes to the need to wash the netillas yadayim in preparation for Kriya Shema and davening, yesh suffix, we have a suffix, im atam shel netillas yadayim shachris kar Rashba, le'el b'Mishnah Berurah sif katan aleph, if we paskin like the Rashba. And we hold that the main reason for netillas yadayim is because nasa kibriya chadasha, v'im kain, if so, afal gav dahashta loy nasa briya chadasha, even though it's true that in this case, since you were up all night, you are not nasik berachah dasha, still you have to wash and you have to make a netillas yadayim. You know why? Loi plug rabbanon v'tzarech netila. According to the Rashba, there's a takonas chazal. The chazal were misaken that when you get up in the morning, you have to give shevach v'hidah to the Rabbeinu Shalom that chadashim labikarim rabbe emunasecha. Every day of the year, right, 9 out of 10, you go to sleep at night and you wake up in the morning and you're nasik berachah dasha. Even on the night that you pulled an all-nighter and you didn't go to sleep last night, the rest of the world, most of them, did go to sleep. Even on Shavuos night, when so many people are staying up, there are plenty of people who went to sleep. And they woke up in the morning, and chadashim labikarim rabbe emunasecha. This is the practice of the world. This is the normal way that the world operates, all based on the chesed of the Rabbeinu Shalom. Chaste Hashem ki lo samnu ki lo chalu rachamav. Chadashim labikarim rabbe emunasecha. Those are the two psukim in Eicha. Chaste Hashem ki lo samnu. The kindness of the Rabbeinu Shalom, it never ends. Ki lo chalu rachamav. His rachmanus, his mercy never runs out. Chadashim labikarim rabbe emunasecha. The way of the world is that the Rabbeinu Shalom makes us a berachah dasha every morning. And therefore, there's a takonas chazal that every morning we wash the netillas yadayim and we make this berachas hoidah. Remember what I told you at the beginning of this year? Not a berachas mitzvahs. We make a berachas hoidah asher kedishanu b'mitzvahs of tzivanu al netillas yadayim to thank the Rabbeinu Shalom for the way of the world. Chadashim labikarim rabbe emunasecha. Therefore, says the Mishnah Berurah, and I think he's basing this really on a taz. Says the Mishnah Berurah, you should know that according to the Rashba, even if you stay up all night, there is a need for netillas yadayim and for a berachah v'sher kedishanu b'mitzvahs v'tzivanu al netillas yadayim before Kriya Shema and Tefillah. Because the rationale of thanking the Rabbeinu Shalom for chadashim labikarim rabbe emunasecha applies even if you personally stayed up the whole night. So based on that, says the Mishnah Berurah, this is why the Mechaber says that there's a great suffix of what to do if you stayed up all night. Because according to the Rashba, there is a need for netillas yadayim and for a berachah. Or perhaps, continues the Mishnah Berurah, Shema ikar atam karasham. Maybe the ikar tam for netillas yadayim is not the Rashba. It's the Rosh. Yadayim askaniyos. But if you stayed up the whole night, there's no problem of yadayim askaniyos. And now, there's no reason for the netillas yadayim. So, again, the Mechaber said, if you stayed up the whole night, there's a suffix whether you have to wash the netillas yadayim for Kriya Shema or Tefillah. There's also a suffix whether you have to wash the netillas yadayim to remove the rachra. So far, the Mishnah Berurah explained to us what the suffix is, whether or not you have to wash for Kriya Shema and Tefillah. What's the suffix? The suffix is, do we paskin like the Rosh or do we paskin like the Rashba? If we paskin like the Rosh, there's no need to wash the netillas yadayim. You were up the whole night. There's no problem of yadayim askaniyos. There's no reason to suspect that your hands are unclean. There's no reason to wash. So you don't wash, you don't make a berachah on netillas yadayim. But according to the Rashba, even though you were up the whole night, and this morning nasik berachah dasha did not personally apply to you, doesn't matter. There's a loy plug. The Chachamim were misakin this idea of netillas yadayim with a berachas haidah every morning, because this is the way the world works. And therefore, even though you stayed up the whole night and nasik berachah dasha didn't apply to you today, there's still a need to wash the netillas yadayim and to make a bracha. So do we paskin like the Rashba? Then you have to wash the netillas yadayim. Do we paskin like the Rosh? Then you don't have to. So that's suffix number one. Suffix number one is, do we have to wash the netillas yadayim in preparation for Kriya Shema or Tefillah? We don't know. We have a suffix. What's the suffix? Do we paskin like the Rosh or do we paskin like the Rashba? Now, I told you that the Mishnah Berurah is based on the Taz. Which Taz? Because the Taz is very puzzled. The Taz says, the Beis Yosef is the one that says that if we paskin like the Rashba, you have to wash the netillas yadayim. Why? Because of a loy plug. The Chachamim made this takana. This takana applies every day, even if you stayed up all night, and that's a kibrich hadasha doesn't apply to you today. Still loy plug. You still have to wash the netillas yadayim. You still have to make a berachah. Frek the Taz. Why don't you say the same thing in the Rush? According to the Rush also. Maybe according to the Rush, the Chazal were masakin that yadayim askaniya is heim, and therefore you have to wash the netillas yadayim in the morning because your hands are unclean. So even if it doesn't apply to you today because you didn't go to sleep, still you have to wash the netillas yadayim and you have to make a berachah, right? You said a loy plug on the Rashba, say a loy plug on the Rush. Says the Taz, no, because you can't compare the Rashba and the Rush. According to the Rashba, it's a berachas haidah. And it's a berachas haidah based on the fact that even though it's not personally negated to you today, it still is the way the world operates. Most of the world did go to sleep last night. And they were nasa kibrich hadasha in the morning. And it's a berachas haidah that we make every day of our lives. We thank the Rabbeinu Shalom for Chadasha Labakar, Rabbi B'Nusecha. According to the Rush, it's not a berachas haidah, it's a berachas hamitzvahs. And what is the mitzvah based on? If your hands are unclean, you can't say Kriya Shema, you can't say Tefillah, you have a practical problem. You have yadayim and tunafis, you can't daven, you can't say the shame, you can't say Kriya Shema. So you have to wash. It's a mitzvah to wash. You make an netillas yadayim. But if the mitzvah doesn't apply to you, the mitzvah doesn't apply to you. It's not a loy plug that since the mitzvah applies to most of the world. That's like saying that on Rosh Hashanah, most of the people are going to hear shofar, so even if you're in a place where you're not going to hear shofar, you should make a berachah of Lishmaya Kol Shofar because loy plug. Purim, you don't have a Megillah, you're not going to hear Megillah, you should make Al Mikra Megillah because loy plug. No, it's a mitzvah. If you're being Mekayim the mitzvah, you make a berachah. You're not being Mekayim the mitzvah, you don't make a berachah. But on a takana that the Chazal made to give Shevach Vaidah to the Rabbeinu Shalom, because the world works a certain way, the Rashba, over there, it passes to say loy plug. Okay, wow, this took a very long time. But just to wrap up, to make sure we understand so far. So here in Sif Yud Gimel, what did the Mechaber say so far? You were up the whole night, Suffolk. We don't know if you have to wash for Kriya Shema and Tefillah. We don't know if you have to wash for berachah. So far we explained why there's a suffix if you have to wash for Kriya Shema and Tefillah. Suffix is, do we pass it like the Rush? Then there's no need. Do we pass it like the Rashba? Then there is a need. It's a suffix. So we have a suffix. Now let's go to the next suffix. Do you need to wash if you were up the whole night in order to remove the berachah? Says the Mishnah Berurah 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines off the bottom. And whether or not you need to wash your hands in order to remove the berachah, that's shayra al yadayim, when you wake up, if you were up the whole night, there's also a suffix. What's the suffix? And this is a very important suffix to keep in our minds as we go further. The question is, what specifically generates the berachah? Says the Mishnah Berurah, Im ba'alma hashena goyrim a berachah. Is the goyrim, the cause of the berachah, sleeping? Is that what causes the berachah? That would go very well with the way I've been explaining it until now, which is you deposit your neshama with the Rabbeinu Shalom. The neshama left the guf. Now the Rabbeinu Shalom, bechemla, returns the neshama to the guf. Your nase, your not just nase b'chadasha, and I'm mixing in the Rashba. Now, when the neshama left, a berachah descended on the guf, so the sleeping caused the berachah to descend on the guf. That's one possibility. Now, if that's true, then afilu yashin b'yoyim shayra berachah. If that's true, then if you take a nap during the day, you also have to wash the netillas yadayim to take off the berachah. Basically, sleeping causes the descent of the berachah onto the guf. So if you slept, there's berachah. If you didn't sleep, there's no berachah. So if you were up the whole night, there's no berachah. So that's one perspective. That's one way to look at it. V'tzarich lito yadav. V'ner b'layla in tzarich lito yadav. Or perhaps it's not sleeping that causes the berachah. Halayla goyrim a berachah. There's another possibility, which is that night. Night. Laila is an acronym for Golus, Laila is an acronym for Hastar Aspanim, the hiding of the Shechina. Laila, darkness, is always another way of talking about bad times, dangerous times. Mazikim come out by Laila. So maybe Laila alone is Geirim the Rachra. So therefore, even if you stayed up the whole night, it doesn't matter. The passage of the night causes the Rachra. And if that's true, then the truth is the opposite of what Mishnah Berurah just said. If it's night that causes the Rachra, so you slept during the day, who cares? Sleeping doesn't cause the Rachra. Laila causes the Rachra. You slept during the day, do you have to wash until you die? No Rachra. It's day, it's not night. You were up the whole night? Okay, who cares if you were up? You went through the night. If you go through the night, there's Rachra. You have to wash your hands. So, okay, here we go. That was the problem of Sif Yud Gimel. The Mechaber's suffix of Sif Yud Gimel. You were up the whole night. We don't know if you have to wash the Tils Yadayim. We don't know if you have to wash for Kriyishma Tefillah, because we don't know if we pass it like the Rosh or we pass it like the Rashba. According to the Rosh, you don't have to. According to the Rashba, you do have to. You want to remove the Rachra off your hands? We don't know if there is a Rachra. Why? Because if sleeping causes the Rachra, you didn't sleep. There's no Rachra. If night causes the Rachra, well, it was night, and now it's morning. So then there is Rachra. So we have a great big suffix. What do? Interestingly enough, the Mechaber didn't say what to do. The Ramah said what to do. The bottom line in the Shulchan Aruch. The Ramah said, V'yitleim b'loi berachah. He brought down from the Rosh and the Rashba, what should you do? You should wash until you die without a bracha. Says the Mishnah Berurah, he's cutting Chavtes, V'yitleim, you should wash. Says the Mishnah Berurah, what does that mean? You should wash. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Tzayna Leimar, what the Ramah wants to say is you should wash shalosh pa'amim. Wash 3 times from a keli, machba suffix, because you have this suffix, right? We have a suffix whether or not there's rachra. Not only is there a suffix whether or not you have to wash for kriyishma and tefillah, there's also a suffix of rachra. So wash, but wash 3 times from a keli. V'chein b'shnei ha'seifim she'achar zeh, that's also going to apply equally to Sif Yudalad and Sif Tezvav, when the Ramah is going to say in both seifim that you should wash without a bracha, it means to wash 3 times with a keli. Without a bracha. You're going to wash below bracha. That's the psak of the Ramah. We have a suffix, wash without a bracha. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Yesh meha achroinim, there are achroinim, and amongst them is the Bach. Yesh me achroinim shecholkin al hachras haramah bazeh. They disagree with the psak of the Ramah. The psak of the Ramah is, we're mesupik, what do? Wash without a bracha. Says the Mishnah Berurah, the Bach, the Meiser Rav, they take issue with the Ramah, they disagree, v'soivrim ditzarech levarech, and they hold that you do have to wash the Tils Yadayim, and you should make a bracha. Why does the Bach say you should make a bracha? Because the Bach, it would seem, does not agree with the Taz that I quoted to you. The Bach says, the same way you're making a loy plug according to the Rashba, you also make a loy plug according to the Rosh. You made a loy plug in the Rashba, and you said even though Nasa Kibir Chadasha doesn't apply to you today because you were up all night, it doesn't matter. There's an inyan of netillas yadayim with a bracha anyway. Chadasha blabikam rabba amunasecha, says the Bach. So too according to the Rosh. According to the Rosh, there's also a loy plug. Even though tonight there was no issue of yadayim askani yisayim because you were up the whole night, doesn't matter. Since yadayim askani yisayim applies on the vast majority of nights throughout the year, there's a loy plug. Even if you stayed up the whole night, you do wash with a bracha. So says the Bach. V'yesh shamaskimim imai. But there are other achronim that agree with the Ramah, and he brings down the Shari Tshuva and Artzis Achayim. So, the Mechaber, there's a suffix. The Ramah, wash without a bracha. The Mishnah Berurah, it's a machlokes achronim. Some agree with the Ramah, wash without a bracha. Some disagree, and they say you should wash with a bracha. What's a person to do? Oh, says the Chavetz Chaim, we sneak away out of all the sveikas. V'chol zeh b'lo yaseh tzrachav. Says the Mishnah Berurah, this only really applies if you were up the whole night and in the morning before Kriya Shema and Tefillah, you didn't use the Beis HaKisei. Avalim asa tzrachav kaidem atfila. But if you use the Beis HaKisei before davening, then haskamas achroinim, then the achroinim all agreed, Yeli Rabba, the Rechachayim, Rabbi Kiva Eger, the Artzachayim, the Chayodam, they all agree to bazet tzarach litol yadav v'levarich, that then you wash the netillas yadayim with a berachah. Why? Because now you took care of the rush. The reason why, according to the Rush, we said you don't need to wash the netillas yadayim is because since you were up the whole night, there was no problem of yadayim askani, I say. And there's no reason to think that your hands are unclean. But if you went to the Beis HaKisei, your hands are unclean. So you went to the Beis HaKisei before davening, your hands are unclean, you have to wash the netillas yadayim in preparation for Kriya Shema Tefillah. So now, according to the Rashba, you need the netillas yadayim with a bracha because loy plug. According to the Rush, you need netillas yadayim with a bracha in preparation for Kriya Shema and Tefillah because you went to the Beis HaKisei and your hands are unclean. So beautiful. Go wash the netillas yadayim with a bracha. Now you'll ask me, Rabbi Weiss, but what happens if I use the Beis HaKisei before mincha? Do I wash the netillas yadayim with a bracha? So we'll deal with that later. We're going to see that you do not, but we'll deal with that another time. And says the Mishnah Berurah, V'chein nachayin lasos lechatchila. This is lechatchila, the way one should comport himself. B'mi shener kol halayla, if he's up the whole night. Kigoin b'leil Shavuos, like on the night of Shavuos. What should you do? Yas etzrachav, you should go to the Beis HaKisei, gedolim, o yatol mayim, or you should at least go use the Beis HaKisei and for urination, v'yeshav shef, and clean yourself so that your hands are unclean. Sha'oz l'kul yalma yischayev levarech, and now you're zicha, have a chiyuv to make an al netillas yadayim, even according to the Rush, because even though you didn't sleep, you are now standing before Kriya Shema and before Tefillah, and you know you have unclean hands. V'yavarach al netillas yadayim v'asher yotzar, and you're going to make a bracha al netillas yadayim and a bracha of asher yotzar. So, okay, recap the shaila. What do you do if you're up all night? Halachah lamaisa. What do you do for the netillas yadayim? You pulled an all-nighter. The answer is, before you go to daven, make sure you use the Beis HaKisei and that your hands touched an unclean part of the body. Now you'll go wash the netillas yadayim and you'll make a bracha al netillas yadayim, because according to the Rashba, you need to anyway, even if you didn't use the Beis HaKisei, because there's a loy plug, chadashim labekarim rabbe emunasecha. You have to wash your hands and you have to make an al netillas yadayim, because for most of the world and for all the other days of the year, you're nasa kibriya chadasha, and you have to thank the Rabbeinu Shalom for that. According to the Rush, now that you used the Beis HaKisei and you didn't yet say Kriya Shema and Tefillah, your hands, yadayim and tunafais, your hands are unclean. You have to go wash and make an al netillas yadayim in preparation for Kriya Shema and Tefillah. Rachra, we don't know. We don't know. Is night goyrim the rachra, and therefore now you have rachra on your hands? Or is sleeping goyrim the rachra, and you didn't sleep, so there is no rachra? But what's the difference? You're going to wash your hands anyway. So wash your hands 3 times from a keli. And until you wash your hands 3 times from a keli, don't touch a place on your body that you shouldn't touch before netillas yadayim. Beautiful. That was Sif Yud Gimel. Wow, it took a lot longer than I expected, but we have some time to go weiter, even though what's coming up now is just as complex, if not more so. Okay. Sif Yud Daled. Hishkim koidem amud hashachar v'not al yadav. Somebody got up before Alois. Somebody got up 4 o'clock in the morning. Okay, now, the case of the mechaber is somebody got up very early in the morning before Alois, and he's not going back to sleep. So he got up, he washed negelvasser, he washed the netillas yadayim, he used the facilities, and now he's not going back to sleep. And now, later on, we're going to have a question, does he have to wash the netillas yadayim again? Let's see the mechaber. Hishkim koidem amud hashachar. Somebody got up before Alois, v'not al yodav, and he washed netillas yadayim, and he did not go back to sleep. Yesh lehistapek, there is room for a suffix, im tzarich litol yodav pam acheres kisheyeyer hayoim, when dawn passes by, does he need to wash netillas yadayim again? What's the suffix? Lahave ruach ra hashoira al hayadayim. There's a question. He washed netillas yadayim before alois. Now alois came along. What happens with the ruach ra? What's the suffix? The suffix is the same suffix that we just had before. What is pshat in the ruach ra? What's goyrim the ruach ra? Is sleeping goyrim the ruach ra? So this person was sleeping. He woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning. Ostensibly, when he wakes up at 4 o'clock in the morning, it's before alois, but he slept and he woke up. So now he has ruach ra in his hands. He washed the netillas yadayim. Bye-bye ruach ra. The ruach ra is gone. So if sleeping is goyrim the ruach ra, if sheina, sleeping, is goyrim the ruach ra, so he had ruach ra on his hands by virtue of the fact that he was sleeping, and then he woke up, but he removed it when he went ahead and he washed negelvasser when he woke up before alois. When he woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning, he washed negelvasser, and he took care of the ruach ra. Now he's done. There's no need to wash again as far as ruach ra is concerned. He already took care of the ruach ra. But maybe Laila is goyrim the ruach ra. Maybe it is night that is goyrim the ruach ra. If night is goyrim the ruach ra, so then it's possible that it's very nice you got up at 4 o'clock in the morning and you washed negelvasser, but it's still night. And when the dawn comes, when alois hashachar comes, that's when the ruach ra is going to settle on your hands. So it's very nice that you washed negelvasser at 4 o'clock in the morning, but guess what? You didn't get rid of the ruach ra, because the ruach ra wasn't really there yet to be gotten rid of. It's Lila, and it would seem it's the end of the Lila that's goyrim the problem of the ruach ra resting on your hands. There's a very fascinating bachacher, Shel Avram, from the bachacher, that is very negeya halachah l'maisa with some of the halachas we're going to discuss on this page. At this point, I really don't know that we're getting to it today anymore. And that is, the bachacher says, you know how the ruach ra works? At night, or when you're sleeping, the ruach ra is all over the body. In the morning, the ruach ra starts to leave the body. It goes out by the way of the hands, but it settles very intensely on the hands. I don't want to get into this bachacha more because it's really negeya what we're going to say later. But again, what's the mechaber's suffix over here? The mechaber's suffix is, a guy got up before alois. He got up at 4 o'clock in the morning. He washed negelvasser. If sleeping was goyrim the ruach ra, so then he had ruach ra, he woke up, he washed negelvasser, goodbye ruach ra, kaput, finished. Does he have to wash again after alois? No, there's no reason at all. But if Laila is goyrim the ruach ra, so it's very nice that you washed negelvasser at 4 o'clock in the morning. But then when alois came, that's when the ruach ra finally left and it settled on your hands. So you have to wash again. So again, let's see the words of the mechaber Sif Yodalad. Hishkim koydem amud hashachar v'natal yadav. You got up before alois and you washed negelvasser. Yesh lehistapek, and you didn't go back to sleep. Yesh lehistapek, there is room for a suffix in tzarich lito yadav pamacheres kishayei arayim. Maybe you have to wash a second time. Lahave ruach ra asher al yadayim, to remove the ruach ra that now rests on your hands. Haga, says the Ramav, yitleim lo berachah. So the answer is, what should you do? Go ahead and wash without a bracha. Now, very critical. Notice what the mechaber did not discuss. The mechaber did not discuss whether or not you have to wash your hands for tefillah. Rashba, washing your hands for Kriya Shema tefillah. The mechaber did not mention that in Sif Yud Dalet. In Sif Yud Gimel, when somebody stayed up the whole night, the mechaber said there's a dual suffix. We don't know if you have to wash for Kriya Shema tefillah. We don't know if you have to wash for ruach ra. Sif Yud Dalet, where the question is somebody who got up before alois over there and washed. Over there, says the mechaber, there's only one suffix. There's a suffix whether you have to wash a second time to get rid of the ruach ra. But is there any suffix whether or not you have to wash a second time in preparation for Kriya Shema or tefillah? The mechaber didn't say that. Says the Mishnah Berurah is Katan Lamed Aleph. Kishayei arayim. The suffix is, do you have to wash a second time to take off the ruach ra after alois? Says the Chavetz Chaim. Why is there such a suffix? Ki yesh oimrim, because there are those that say the ba'amud hashachar chayzer ruach ra lishreis pam shenis, that the ruach ra comes, he says, a second time, like it returns by alois. That's when it comes. So again, what is this suffix? It would seem that this suffix is whether or not shena is geirim or ruach ra is or lila is geirim. Oiskal labed beis lahavir. There's a question whether or not you have to wash a second time to get rid of the ruach ra. Says the Chavetz Chaim, hacha loy nakat lihispalil. Notice that the Mechaber doesn't mention that there's a question whether or not you have to wash the netillas yadayim in preparation for Kriya Shema or Tefillah. Hacha loy nakat lihispalil k'may shekasa sif yud gimel. Why? Tevadai mishum Tefillah ain't tzarich bazeh oida pam litol yadayim. Because there's no reason to think that you have to wash your hands again in preparation for Kriya Shema or Tefillah. Why? Let's analyze this. It's very simple. Again, why do you have to wash your hands in the morning for Kriya Shema or Tefillah? Rosh, Rashba. Let's take them one at a time. This guy woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning before Alois. According to the Rosh, while he was sleeping, yadayim askani yoisheim, his hands touched all over his body, his hands are unclean. Okay, he went, he washed the netillas yadayim, his hands are clean. Why should he have to wash a second time when dawn comes? He didn't go back to sleep, so why should he wash a second time? That takes care of the Rosh. The Rashba. According to the Rashba, why do you have to wash your hands in the morning? Nasa kibriya chadasha. Okay, you woke up 4 o'clock in the morning, you were nasa kibriya chadasha. You washed the netillas yadayim. Why do you have to wash a second time? Very pashut. So hachaloi nakat lihispal k'may shekasa sif yud gimel. Devadei b'shum tefillah ain't tzarich bazeh oida pam litol yadayim. Whether you pass it like the Rosh or whether you pass it like the Rashba, there seems to be no need to go wash the netillas yadayim a second time in preparation for Kriya Shema or Tefillah. So the only suffix is on the ruach ra, because we don't know what pshat with this ruach ra is. We don't know. Maybe Lila is geirim, and now even though you wash your hands at 4 o'clock in the morning, when dawn breaks, that's when the ruach ra is going to settle on your hands. So could be for ruach ra you have to wash. Now the Mishnah Berurah starts to get a little bit more complicated, and now the Mishnah Berurah changes the case from the Mechaber's case. And the Mechaber's case was you woke up before dawn and you didn't go back to sleep. You woke up, you washed the netillas yadayim, you didn't go back to sleep. But what happens if you wake up before dawn, you wash the netillas yadayim, and you go back to sleep? Says the Mishnah Berurah, Va'afilu im chazar v'yoshan pam shenis kaidem amud hashachar. Even if you do go back to sleep before dawn, dibazeh bevadai tzarich mishum ruach ra oida pam litol yadayim, then in the context of ruach ra, you certainly need to wash your hands again. Why? Because now there's no suffix for the ruach ra. Let's say the shena, let's say sleeping is geirim the ruach ra. Okay, you went back to sleep. So you slept. Now you get up again, you have ruach ra again. Let's say Lila is geirim the ruach ra. Certainly it's night. So when dawn comes, the night is over, there's ruach ra. So again, if you got up before Alois and you went back to sleep, so then from the standpoint of ruach ra, you certainly have to make another berachah. You certainly have to wash, no bracha. You never make a bracha for ruach ra. You certainly have to wash negav aser again from the standpoint of ruach ra. Mikol makaim ein yachal levarach on netillas yadayim, but you're not going to be able to make a bracha. Va'afilu im hashen hoysa shinas kva. Even if when you went back to sleep, you slept a significant sleep, a shinas kva. Why? Because according to the Rosh, you need another netillas yadayim. According to the Rosh, you got up at 4 o'clock in the morning before Alois, or 3 o'clock in the morning, in the middle of the night. You got up, you washed the netillas yadayim. Okay, yadayim askani yoisheim. Yeah, you wanted to wash the netillas yadayim. You washed the netillas yadayim. Fine. Now you went back to sleep. Okay, you're sleeping. Yadayim askani yoisheim again. So now when you wake up in the morning before Kriya Shema, before Tefillah, you need to wash negav aser. So according to the Rosh, there's a very good argument why you should wash again and you should make another bracha. But we can't. You know why? Danu chayshishin lishitas harajba. because we have to worry about the Rashba. The Rashba, nasa kibrei chadasha. The svira laid the tam netillas mishum de babayka nasa brei chadasha. Upam achas nasa adam brei chadasha. You only become a brei chadasha once. V'lo shtei pamim, not twice. Umishum rach rabel vad lo tiknu bracha. So to summarize, I know we're going long, but to summarize what the Mishnah Berurah just said in this beautiful Mishnah Berurah, Ois Katan Lamed Beis, is he says like this. The Mechaber addressed one case here in Sif Yodal. The Mechaber addressed a case where somebody got up before Alois. He washed Negel Wasser and then he stayed up. In that case, the Mechaber said, to wash for Kriya Shema Tefillah, you certainly don't have to. Because you woke up before Alois, yadayim askani yisem, you washed Negel Wasser. You didn't go back to sleep. So according to the Rush, why do you have to wash again? According to the Rashba, you woke up before Alois, you were nasa kibrei chadasha, you washed Negel Wasser. You didn't go back to sleep. Why should you wash again? So according to the Rush and the Rashba, preparation for Kriya Shema Tefillah, there's certainly no reason to wash. There's a suffix whether or not you have to wash because of berachah. It could be that Laila is goyrim the berachah, and now, even though you washed Negel Wasser before Alois, but now at Alois, the berachah came onto your hands. So maybe for berachah you have to wash again. So the Ramah said, okay, wash again without a bracha, no problem. Says the Mishnah Berurah now, but what if you got up before Alois and then you went back to sleep? If you got up before Alois and you went back to sleep, now, berachah, you certainly have to wash a second time because you went back to sleep at night. So if night is goyim the berachah, so it was night. By Alois, the berachah settled on your hands. If Shina is goyim the berachah, you went back to sleep. So you slept. So there's berachah. So you certainly have to wash again for berachah. But do you make a bracha? Well, we never make a bracha for berachah. For the netillas yadayim for berachah alone, we never make a bracha. But over here, there's another reason why you have to wash, and that's the rush. Because you went back to sleep. If you went back to sleep before Kriya Shema and Tefillah, you went back to sleep, you have the problem of yadayim askaniyos again. So according to the rush, you have to wash. So you have to wash for berachah, you have to wash because of the rush, but you still can't make a bracha. You know why? Because according to the Rashba, you don't have to wash. Why? Because according to the Rashba, you were nasa kibrei chadasha when you woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning. Now that you went back to sleep, we don't say nasa kibrei chadasha again. Chadashim labekarim rabbi munasech. It's a once a day thing. It's not a multiple time thing. We never find a suffix that according to the Rashba, maybe if you take a nap in the afternoon, you have to wash the netillas yadayim with a berachah because nasa kibrei chadasha. Nasa kibrei chadasha is a once a day thing in the morning when you wake up. So you woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning, you washed the netillas yadayim. You were yoitz to the Rashba, so now you went back to sleep. You're not going to go wash again for the Rashba. Now we're going to have to stop here because we're going overtime. But when we start tomorrow's shir, we'll talk halachah lamaisa, negeya to a lot of people all the time. You woke up in the middle of the night. You woke up 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning. You used the basic kisei. You went back to sleep. What do? Do you wash Negel Wasser? Do you make a bracha? Do you make a bracha in the morning when you get up later in the morning? So Mir Hashem will discuss that first thing at the beginning of tomorrow's shir. As we're going to fall a little bit behind, but these halachos are so complex, it's so beautiful, we got to do it right. We can't just focus on the schedule. Thank you so much for joining me for limud HaTorah. This was limud HaTorah should be making against Klal Yisrael. The Rosh Hashanah should send Yeshua for us, Parnasset should give them to all those in need, and we should be zeicher to see the B'Yeskel Tzedek B'Meherav Yameinu. Amen. Be well.